Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Georgia's capital for a fifth night. Here are some live pictures now coming in from Tbilisi, Georgia. And it looks like there's a lot of tear gas happening there, people running from the scene. So protesters there are angered by the government's decision to suspend talks on joining the European Union. For more, we're joined by Georgian Ambassador to Australia, Beka Dvali. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us on News Breakfast.
Good morning. Happy to be your guest.
What do you make of the protests there?
First of all, we recently, on 26th of October, Georgia had another regular parliamentary elections. We had a new parliament formed, new government is in place, and shortly we shall elect electoral college, which will elect new president. So democratic process is ongoing. On the other hand, Georgia's top priority, one of the top priorities of foreign policy, is European integration. There is basically unanimity among governing party as well as opposition, general public, that Georgia is moving towards European Union membership. Obviously, it is a long process. It involves meeting certain criteria, and we are doing our utmost to meet those benchmarks. Last decade or so, Georgia has already signed with European Union certain agreements, association agreement, deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. Georgian citizens enjoy visa-free travel to European Union, and only last year we became candidate nation. Recently, the Georgian government, after elections, announced yet once again that Georgia continues to be committed to our European integration path, that for now we have around 50 to 60% implementation in terms of our the criteria for EU membership, and government committed that we shall continue this effort, and by around 2028 we shall be ready. Already we shall have met around 90% of those criteria. And
Ambassador, sorry to interrupt you, but if the government is on the path to these EU talks, why have these been suspended for 4 years? I mean, this is what has sparked these protests.
Yes. But first of all, this definition of something was suspended is not actually, it is not true. What government said that we continue as usual. We are on the path of European integration. We continue the process of compliance with European Union criteria. But what government actually said that formally we shall, from our side, we shall formally approach European Union to open these accession talks only on 2028, when we already be ready for final phase of accession phase of this European Union membership, because it is European Union who actually gave indication, public indications, that next enlargement of European Union will happen only in 2030. So government believes that in any case we continue this compliance process, and when we formally open negotiations on 2028, 2 years will be more than enough to for final to complete the accession process. It is important not when you open the final phase of process of accession, these negotiations, but when you close it. And we believe that we anyway continue this compliance process, and we shall successfully close it, and we shall be ready more than other candidate countries for EU membership and in our compliance by 2028.
Ambassador, may I ask you about the protests, though? The US has condemned the use of force by police and security officials as excessive. The president claims police are targeting journalists and political leaders, describing it as brutal and disproportionate. How do you respond to that? We've seen the pictures.
Yes, Georgia is a democracy. We have constitution. We are part of international human rights protection systems, and obviously right of meeting and assembly is freely exercised by citizens. But in situations when peaceful protests devolve into violence, obviously law enforcement has to use proportional force. And what we have been seeing in recent days that sometimes the protests start peacefully, but then they evolve into violence and attacks on parliamentary premises, and Molotov cocktails are thrown on police, fireworks are weaponized, and there are more than 100 policemen already seriously injured, actually. So when protests are peaceful, obviously there is no question that it is this peaceful right to peaceful protest is exercised and honored by government. But of course, as any responsible government, law enforcement has to use proportional force. And if in that process there are some excessive use of force, obviously all these cases are identified and are investigated into.
Ambassador, you mentioned the elections in October, which have been disputed and criticised. You also mentioned Georgia's president, whose term ends soon. Now, she has said that she will not leave her role until fresh elections happen. Will it ever happen? Will Georgia see fresh elections?
First of all, Georgian elections, as I said, were held. We had thousands of observers, foreign observers, local observers, and Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. They had huge observation missions. They have already preliminary report, which concluded that elections were competitive. Pre-election campaign was very much enjoyed by a spectrum of political forces, and on electoral day also it was very well administered by electoral commission. So if some forces dispute these elections, this does not mean that election itself didn't happen, and we have already legitimate popular elected parliament and government. And of course, main point here is that political process will continue and will evolve as it is enshrined in Georgian constitution and legislation. Another thing what various politicians may claim, but main point is here is that Georgia is a state based on the rule of law, and it is important for electoral everything, for political process to evolve around legislation. And the next stage in this process is electing new president by electoral college, and going through this normal political life, which is inevitable. And of course, I cannot predict how the constitutional process or political process transpire, and when it will lead to any elections. From today's standpoint, next regular elections will be 4 years later.
Okay, Ambassador. Yes. Well, there has certainly been some dispute over those elections, including from the EU. We thank you very much for joining us on News Breakfast this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.